District. He's gonna give us his annual fire season outlook, so let's give Scott.
You don't mess around, Scott.
What's that? That's the word, come on. All right, I'm Scott Nielsen, I'm the Wildfire Battalion Chief for Durango Fire. So this is, I think, the third or fourth year that I've given the seasonal outlook. And I'm just as bad as a weatherman. I'm batting like 500 on my prediction this year, up and down, so take it for what you will, but this just kind of shows how we determine wildfire danger coming into the season, of how we staff, how we respond to fires, and kind of methodologies we go about to figure out how we're going to address the fire situation or lack of fire situation that we've had in the past couple of years. But this year does look to be probably busier than the past few years based on a really dry winter. And historically, most of the catastrophic fires here follow two wet summers and a dry winter. And that's because the grass,
Speak up just a little bit.
and that's because the grass grows for 2 or 3 seasons, monsoon seasons, and then no snow, drought comes, and then something starts a fire, then it's off to the races like 2018, 2012, and kind of to some extent 2022. No.
I can do it.
Yeah, no, all right. Yeah, next one, please.
You don't mess it won't let us.
Is it all of us?
What are you doing? Try again.
Okay, okay. All right, so like I said, last year was a really slow year, especially across the Southwest. We had very few consequential fires. I think last year was the first year in probably a decade that we didn't mobilize an incident management team in Florida County, whether type 3 or larger, which is pretty unusual. 2020, 2018, we had multiple incident management teams simultaneously in the county. So last year was pretty calm, and it was a welcome relief. Rolling this winter, we had a pretty cool fall, kind of average moisture, maybe a little below, and then since until May, really, we had really no moisture in the lower elevation. So that's setting us up for at least above normal fire season coming into the early spring. So as we look at our fire season, we look at like what can we affect, what causes fire? It's topography, fuels, and weather. Topography is completely out of our realm of engineering. We can't do anything about that. The weather we can't do, and the fuels are kind of what we try to manipulate, and that's what Kaylee, Alex, and Ashley work a lot with you guys on mitigation, other partners. So those are kind of things that show how we can address fire through fuel manipulation. And, if you do that coupled with the weather, topography, and your site assessments and your mitigation, that really does make meaningful impact. We've seen that in Falls Creek and some other subdivisions in the past couple of years. So as we look at fire prediction, this is more how we predict fires in the short term. So we look at our fuels. I'm sure Alex talks about the 1 hour fuels and the time you have fuels, your mulch beds and stuff. So really your 1 hour fuels are like pine needles, leaves, the dry stuff. That stuff cures to the ambient temperature relative humidity very quickly within 1 hour. That's what's 1 hour fuel. So that's why we worry about the pine needles, the mulch, the leaves around your houses in the forest, because those things rapidly change with the environmental conditions. And then your 10 hour fuels like size of your finger, 100 hour wrist, 1,000 hour kind of your leg, and then 10,000 are the really big ones. And for short term, we look for the 100 hour and below. And I'll show you some charts that I pulled today that show how that really impacts like future fire behavior. So this is how we get our actual live field data. The Forest Service, the BLM, federal government, they sample things weekly during fire season from the same spot, actually several spots. They go to the same tree, same bush, same aspect, same location, and they put the stuff in an oven, cook it, measure it, and they can tell you how much percentage of live fuels is moisture. So when we get down to like 120% in Ponderosa and oak brush, that's when we say like this fuel is pretty receptive to rapid fire growth, large fire spread. So this is one from last year. They hadn't got 2 winters for this year. So this was last year at this same time, rapid drying. So we had Ponderosa, the white fir, those are at a critical stage, and that's only because we're pre-green up in the timber. So that's why we'll often see decent sized fires before summer, because all those trees haven't photosynthesize and taking on nutrients and moisture. So, now we're in the green up, so we should see these moistures like rapidly rising with the rain we've had in the past 2 weeks. So this comes out every day during fire season, and my laser's not working in the screen probably. So the topmost row highlighted in yellow, that's our 1,000-hour fuel. That takes 1,000 hours to equalize with the environment. As the day goes, humidity goes up and down, the temperature does the same thing. So this is kind of an average of that over, course of 40 days. So right now we're at a 13.72% fuel moisture for dead logs, like 1,000-hour fuels, and that's actually pretty good. That means it will sustain fire, but it won't rapidly spread fire. What we look at is, all that rain we got, we're at 8.2% 1 hour fuel moisture, just after 36 hours after it rained all over the county. So this is going to drop probably down to 6% tomorrow, 4% the next day. That's how we can really kind of figure out that short-term fire duration. But we can see the 1,000-hour fuels aren't receptive to fire. So we might get a pulse of fire in the daytime, nighttime comes, humidity goes up, temperatures go down, fire slows down. So that means, the heat of the day, potential for fire in the next few days, next couple of weeks, but large fire growth without wind is probably not super likely. This is the critical fuel value to look at. So when we see a day with 4 or more, really 5, especially orange, that means critical fire environment. That's like the red flag days. And this takes into account fuel moisture, temperature, humidity, and wind speed. So when we couple all those, that's how we can prepare ourselves to know, like, if we get a start today, if the base of a slope or in the fourth area, like this is going to be a full response from all the fire agencies. So that's kind of how we meter out like how our response plans work for wildfire. And this is all based on history. So these raw stations and the weather that we get comes from the past 30 so years of weather data, and that ties into the significant fires in the zone in the past couple of years. So West Fork, Missionary, 416 fire, those all were a 4 or 5 critical fire factor day. So, there's always the anomalies out there, with some wind or some weird microclimate, but usually when you have 4 of these, that's pretty concerning when you get a fire start. This is same as today, so I didn't change it. So this is how the National Weather Service monitors your 1,000-hour fire or fuel moisture. And you can see, like, even with the rain we had, like, it takes 1,000 hours to equalize. So like that rain hasn't helped the big logs. One thing helping them is the snow and the cool winter we've had until recently. Looking into long-term, the drought index, I pulled the new one today. It came out, I think, a couple days ago, last week. So these come out every week. The drought map I did 2 weeks ago for a different presentation, it's like changed very little. So this rain has kept us status quo, but it hasn't really taken us out of the drought index. This is predicted, we'll go into that later, but this is predicted to keep kind of moving to the northeast. So like drought is persistent and likely to occur for the next month or so until monsoons materialize. This is our snowpack, and if you look at the 25%, that's our basin, that is not entirely accurate. So this takes into account New Mexico, that part of the San Juan River shed, and that place has not seen snow for months. So, if you were to take those weather stations out, we're probably at 30% snowpack. So it's certainly not good, but it's not quite as dire as it shows there. And you look to our neighbors, the Upper Rio Grande is even worse. Wolf Creek Pass in San Luis Valley, and that is like that's all the Rio Grande headwaters. So not good for our neighbors. We're not doing well, but they're definitely doing worse. Freeze again. This is our temperature outlook for the summer, above average, which it's really hard to say what average is during May and June. May is sometimes one of our hottest months. Some of our record days come in May or June. Some of our rainiest, coolest, temperatures come in May and June for the summer. So this is kind of the outlook. This takes into account like 2 to 3 degrees above average. But if you average the month of May and June out with monsoons and the climate we have here, I don't take a lot of weight into that because 2 or 3 really hot days can skew 30 days of data. This is the one I care about. The seasonal precipitation outlook says average. Who knows what average is over the past 10 years? Flooding, wildfires, all within 10 years. That's the average here is like really hard to predict. Like average doesn't mean a whole lot. So average precipitation is not going to be a crazy monsoon like 2022, and it's not going to be crazy dry like 2018. So take that for what it's worth. Some people really like the La Nina El Nino. I don't find La Nina, El Nino to be very useful here because we live on the edge of the mountains, the edge of the desert. And the way the jet stream moves, like, 50 miles north, 50 miles south, like makes all the difference. If you look at what I look for is the gray, the neutral years. So if you look for our wettest years and our biggest fire years, almost every single one of those has been an El Nino or instant neutral year. So I really think that El Nino doesn't matter here, but some people like it. So this comes from the National Wildfire Coordination Group. They do this data project to their predictive services every month. They do daily and weekly ones too, but this shows our fire potential outlook for May average, which again, I'm not sure what average really means. When 2022 showed a little above average, we had, fire in Ute Pass, one in Parents Peak, and then it rained like in June. So it doesn't show a dire thing. June looks to be a little more busy, which is pretty common. This is based on average, not, fire danger across the nation, but this is, based on county and watershed. So June could be busy, and that's just based on probably the drought. Everything's green, all the vegetation is greened up. There's no rain, so it's starting to dry out, getting back to people feel moisture before the monsoons come. July starts to point to a pretty good monsoon cycle, but the precipitation and the seasonal temperature outlook that we just looked at does not necessarily show that. So, trying to take all these different things into account nothing's really clear right now. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't have a strong feeling, but I think June is probably the one that we're going to have to worry about the most. And then, what if there's a fire? Always call 911. So Durango Fire, all the fire protection districts, the Forest Service, BLM, BIA, they all work together, and 911 is a single source of truth for reporting a fire. We all work together. If it's on Forest Service land, we'll respond. We have mutual aid across the county with all the agencies. If you call 911, they'll get resources headed there quickly. Durango Fire can go anywhere really quick. The Forest Service is scattered. So call 911. The firefighters, the dispatch centers will kind of coordinate the response, beyond that, but, it's the plug for 911. That's your go-to for every emergency in Cloud County and with all of the nation. Our mutual aid agreements are really robust. So like when you see the air tankers and all the hotshot crews, like that's all because we all work together, which is really unusual in this part of this county is like really unusual in the nation. Like we don't have turf battles, we don't squabble over money really. I mean, there's some backdoor conversations, but we put out fires and then we figure out how to deal with the repercussions afterwards, which a lot of places they talk about like, well, it's not my land, so I'm not going to do anything. And that is like not an appropriate response to wildfire, because wildfire is causes expenses just like anything else. If you have something you're curious about, or you're like, maybe this isn't a big deal, call the non-emergency line. We like the 385-2900. That's what we use to report if you're doing controlled burns in your neighborhood or on your property. If you need some information, you can call them. And then if you know it's on Forest Service land, or you need to report like campfire out of the fire ring in Forest Service campground, or you see some narrow dwelling on the national forest, like call the Regional Dispatch Center, and they'll dispatch law enforcement to address those issues. But it's a fire, call 911. If you call on a fire, it's really important to get some good information. Location is really important. Base of the slope, top of the slope. Base of the slope is a little more concerning because fire moves uphill about 7 times quicker than it moves downhill or across the hill. Color of smoke is important. What do you think black smoke would indicate?
Oh, bad.
Bad. Oh, yeah. Black smoke means the entire vegetation is burning, like entire trees, oak brush. The white smoke is usually like leaf litter, pine needles, grass. Not always, but black smoke means a probably pretty severe fire or a structure fire. Houses burn back also, which is also bad. If you can see flames, be accurate in your description of flame length. The amount of fires we go to that have 50-foot flames, everything's 50-foot flames. It's like you get there and it's like, no, that's not, so just be realistic when if you can see it miles away, it probably is 50-foot flames, but very rarely do we go to 50-foot flames, which is good. Potential cause, and that is just if it's human caused, we have to investigate. We try to investigate every fire, but if it's human caused or on the side of a road or something, we just really want to know. That way we can do a little better job of protecting the origin, because sometimes this comes to insurance, law enforcement. We don't have a huge arson problem here, but there's years where there's a firebug out there. So if we know something's out of whack or just something suspicious, let us know, and we'll we'll put the fire out the same as we normally would, but knowing there's something to consider is good for us, because firefighters are really, really good at destroying evidence. If you don't know, there's evidence there. You know this. Evidence eradicators, as they call us. Yeah. Proximity to homes, if it's close to, homes, that's gonna really ramp up our response matrix. And then the callback number info is really important. And if you report a fire, give them your callback number and please answer your phone for the next couple of hours. A lot of firefighters here are from other parts of the country. I have an Oregon phone number. The amount of times that I try to call someone back and they don't answer is pretty frustrating. Because, if you're gonna report it, like, I'm gonna wanna call you and say, where were you? Is the fire you described, is that where you saw it from, or is that where it is? Because it just helps us like dial in like how to get there quicker. So this is kind of how the national system works. So who was here for 416 fire 2018? So there was about, within 2 days, there was 1,200 firefighters here. There are not 1,200 firefighters in all of Southwest Colorado. So how this works is we call our dispatch center, 911, they can't handle it, we call it interagency mutual aid, the Forest Service Dispatch Center, the tech center. They send what they have, they can't cover everything we need. They go to the Geographic Coordination Center in Lakewood, Colorado. They send everything they can have in the region or can spare. They can't do it, it goes to the National Interagency Fire Center in Boise, Idaho. So they just like, that's how we mobilize stuff across the nation very quickly. And that, conversely, like when it's really wet here, California pops a fire, they call NorCal dispatch, they can't cover it, they call Boise, and like they call, back down in Durango. So that's how, on any given day in the country in a busy fire season, there's 35 to 40,000 firefighters on broadband fires. No one has that many, so that's how the whole resource sharing works. So it's a really efficient method of resource mobilization. So for Durango Fire's outlook, we're doing a ton of grant work. We have the WIN grant, which covers a lot of what these guys have. We work with these guys a lot on some other grants. We kind of punted the coastal often as a Louis grant to them, since federal funding has been a little bit of a challenge for anyone who relies on federal funding, unfortunately. So, but yeah, last winter Durango Fire, we burned, it was a pretty slow year. We usually burn 1,000 piles on city open space and private land, but with lack of snow, we didn't feel comfortable doing that because I want to retire here and be a member of the community. So we didn't let it with things on fire. We got 200 last year, mostly in Ute Pass and Twin Buttes, and we just didn't have the snow to do it safely because we really want snow on the ground. Last year, we got 100 acres of open space treated with Durango Fire, mostly grant funded on city open space and in some larger HOAs. And then this year we have 20 dedicated wildfire crew members. So we have 4 overhead people and then 16 to 18 seasonal per year. And they usually work from, because in the season this year, we're working from May to probably October. But if we have a long fire season or more weather for calibrating and mitigation, we'll work until it's too deep to cut trees and too deep to burn things. All the references, if you want to click in here, I can send another link with all these things. All these graphs are publicly sourced from, it's mostly NOAA, the Center Prediction Center, and the National Interagency Fire Center. So Ashley has my contact. Feel free to reach out. My email's in here, but we look at the slideshow. So now it's time for questions.
Do you guys, are you feeling any pressure from, besides the loss of grant money, from the new
Yes.
lack of funding? Or
Part of the problem is just reduction in force and like some stuff that happens in DC that for whatever reasons happens. There's a lot of, like, most primary firefighters in the federal government kept their jobs. But what people don't necessarily understand is a lot of like the biologists, the fisheries people, the trails people, those are all secondary firefighters that do, when you need 30,000 firefighters, that's those people, and they're really experienced. Logistically, it's a big thing. Like, when you think about 416 fire with 1,200 firefighters, there's another 300 or 400 people working on food and porta johns, water, hoses, and like contracts and credit cards and hotels and lodging, and like a lot of those people might not be here this year. So
do you have any kind of plan to how to handle that, or?
No, and the unfortunate thing is what's that?
Feeding needs.
Well, I have a truckload full of food for me, but that doesn't help other people. No, I think we're just gonna have to see what happens. I think, I think once it's difficult a couple times in big communities, like even like this, like it might help change things. The unfortunate thing is Southwest Colorado is like kind of the tip of the spear for fire season behind New Mexico and Arizona. So hopefully they're learning some lessons that we can adapt when it comes here. But no one really knows. I mean, there's a lot of purchasing cards that are no longer active in the federal government. We are really good at spending money to put out fires. So, someone has to pay for this stuff. It's kind of unfortunate.
What's the outlook for having enough water to fight fires this summer? Would drought year contribute to that?
I think it's good. So the city of Durango has a insanely good water infrastructure system. Like the amount of water and pressure and all the hydrants in the city of Durango is really good, like really, really good. So Durango gets its water out of the Florida, primarily in the summer. I think Durango goes through, I want to say 8 million gallons a day in the summer, which is kind of disgusting for living in the desert, but that's what it is. And then they also get water out of the Andes. So Durango's pretty safe for water. It's the other outlying subdivisions and like out, south of town that rely on well water and stuff. That's a little concerning. But, we're pretty good with water, like with helicopters, and all the fire departments have big water tenders and portable pumps. And we're used to drought and getting water out of dry spots quickly. So I think the water will be okay. I mean, I wouldn't guarantee that because who knows, but.
Any other last minute questions online? Nothing online there, Kaylee?
Nothing online yet.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you, guys.
Scott. Really appreciate it. Okay.
Thanks again, Scott.